we don't really go by forensic evidence of it. Like it's usually because a witness saw something. It's usually
Also ask yourself this question. How did they figure out that mass rapes happened in the past? Like I'm talking about long time ago, right? I'm talking about scenarios like the Mongol invasions, right? How did we know that Genghis Khan raped people? How did we know, right? It isn't that people took out a rape kit back during the Mongol horde times, right? It's from accounts at the time, witnesses, historians writing things down immediately, and yeah, just it's a lot of eyewitness related things, right? It's not about, okay, did they have rape kits 5,000 years ago, right?
occasionally a soldier will contest to something, but it's usually because witnesses said so or survivors. That's like the main piece of evidence we use.
Um, the truth, yeah. So the Zaka group he's talking about, who basically in the aftermath, the direct aftermath, there's like an emergency response team called Zaka, and it's a very religious organization. So these people are true believers, right, in that sense, and they show up to do like the most fucked up jobs possible. And by the way, that just tells you something, that in Israel this exists. There's a team of people who show up to sites of mass murdered civilians and clean it up. You have got a group in your neighborhood that does that, you know? And so these guys show up to clean up the bodies. And these guys, by the way, are like traumatized for life after what they saw there. Right. But they're true believers. So a lot of these guys are like, we need to get these bodies in the ground immediately. They thought they knew death, but that didn't prepare them from October 7th. Volunteers with Zaka, an Israeli group that recovers dead bodies, were among the first to reach the victims of Hamas-led attack. The trauma of what they witnessed may last a lifetime. Yeah, so these guys were trying to save them, you know. It's a religious thing, and they want to get them in the ground as soon as possible. And then there's also even an interesting legal battle that I learned about, where apparently they are holding some bodies. The IDF is holding some bodies, and they're all like mangled and burned and charred, and they don't know exactly. They don't even know if they're Hamas fighters or victims or what. And the Zaka, the religious group, is trying to sue to get the bodies buried. And the IDF wants to do forensics on it, but it's like stuck in a legal battle. So Hasan agrees with the IDF.
Yeah, this was a problem with Zaka as well, because there was a dispute over whether the IDF should have their own unit for gathering the bodies or whether Zaka should, because Zaka are a very problematic organization. Like their old leadership has all kinds of like scandals when it comes to like abuse of, I think, even children as well.
Oh, that's not good.
And they are very self-serving. A lot of them, they're a lot of the exaggerated claims and false stories about October 7th, actually, quite a few of them originate from one person in Zaka, from one Zaka volunteer who just went around and lied to everyone about what he saw. You know, again, it's the embellished stories. Like we saw a kid thrown in the oven, or we saw kids thrown in bins, or like these things didn't happen, but people have kind of like latched. And even in Israel, there's a whole dispute with Zaka as well, because a lot of them were very inexperienced, because again, it's a volunteer organization. They were sometimes putting like different body parts of different people into the same bag and mixing them up. They would sometimes take bodies that were already in bags and like take them out of the bag and then put them into a Zaka bag for photo ops. So there is a lot of corruption that's gone on there, because it's a volunteer organization and it's hyper religious, but also people have kind of used that fact to try and smear like every aspect of what people found after the fact.
You're not going to take samples and compare them to the terrorists who see, oh, this one got this victim and this one got this one. Fucking stupid and disgusting. Yeah, sure. I mean, like, they would then say, like, oh, well, is there any semen that's on the bodies at all, right? That's probably what they would say. Actually, let me just, like, Google search this just to make sure. Okay.
Like, the fact is that not every Zaka volunteer is a corrupt individual who wants to, like, cynically use the dead for their own purposes. Like, lots of Zaka volunteers genuinely saw things and said things that are corroborated by other witnesses. So yeah, that's the problem as well. It's like whenever there is a genuine criticism, it has to be used in like the most extreme, like absolutist way possible. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, and I mean, listen, should the IDF be recovering the bodies? Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like they should be, right? But it doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that. Again, remember why we're even talking about this. This is all in service of Hasan denying that rapes happen. This is all in service of him, for some reason, dying on this hill, choosing like this. Even his chatter was like, "Why are you doing?"
Okay, so no, this is not conflicting reports, by the way. But again, there's evidence of sexualized desecration. Yeah. Genital mutilation. Physicians for Human Rights Israel. Okay. Yeah, okay.
This. And he's like, no, fuck you. I will question the rapes. Nobody cares, and nobody fucking cares.
Zaka ended up initial literally wrong. They did actually conduct forensic examination on many of the bodies. They didn't immediately bury them.
Yeah, and what
she's literally wrong. They took the bodies to the Shura base, and they actually did look at the bodies. The issue, however, was that the initial forensic examination was not conducted by real specialists.
That doesn't happen anywhere. That's such an
Zaka
insane
ended
standard.
up desecrating the bodies in the process and ruining.
He says they desecrated the bodies.
Yeah, what the fuck is desecrating the bodies? What the fuck? I mean, sure, they probably exaggerated and lied maybe about stuff, right? Like, which part was it? Which part of this religious Zionist organization in Israel desecrated the bodies?
Which what he means by desecrating the bodies is basically regular Jewish burial ceremony. So that's fucking cool too, by the way.
Any sort of on-the-spot kinetic forensic examination from taking place, because you have to look at the way that like bodies are presented to develop an understanding of what happened, like how this person died. They did.
Listen to this standard. It's remarkable. It's remarkable that he's able to do this out in the open and nobody fucking cares. And the New York Times is so willing to be like, this hot dude is fucking in a MAGA body. MAGA body? What does that mean?
I will never understand that.
He goes on to call Hila a terrorist many times throughout the video.
Okay.
It's a funny thing about me. I don't like terrorism, and I don't like terrorists.
Yes, you do. You're married to one by your own admission.
That part is like just...
That's unhinged. That's fucked up, dude.
You know. They keep doing this. This conflation is insane. Hila's participating in mandatory military service, right? She's not in a combat role.
Food was flabbergasted, and you know, I'll tell you this much, okay? Like I watched this already. I watched this interview with Lonerbox already, but it still doesn't like stop me from, you know, being shocked and utterly flabbergasted. Yeah, is the correct word, I guess, for something like this. It's insane. It's just insane to say. It's like, oh, you're married to a terrorist. What the fuck? That's fucking unhinged, dude. Jesus Christ. And you're saying that to your audience of like, what, 40,000 live concurrent viewers? Yeah. Have you seen the content cop on the IDOS? Yeah, we reacted to it on stream yesterday. Yeah. I'm gonna have a video out on it, you know, probably tomorrow or tonight.
She's essentially forced to serve, and she's not in a combat role. Not everybody in the IDF's a terrorist. Is there war crimes the IDF does? Definitely. Could you call some of these people terrorists? Yes. Is everybody in the IDF a terrorist by definition? Of course not.
It's a kind of strange thing to say when you have no idea what happened during the raid.
That's another thing. We
I liked it. He captured the vibe way more than Ian. Yeah, so I never watched the original. I never really watched the original. Yeah, I don't really watch the original stuff. Okay, I don't watch the original Content Cop. But from what other people have said in the comments, it replicated the same kind of energy as the original Content Cop.
don't even know what happened. Like, that's, yeah. I don't think she even knows what happened, frankly. But imagine, just, dude.
Mission.
And I don't like terrorists.
Yes, you do. You're married to one, and by your own admission. You said.
Interesting to say, dude.
Not me. You said.
Literally said, he asked me, is she a terrorist? And I said no, for the record. The conversation he's recounting.
It post context nuke though, so.
If they're Jews. So that was one. Let's see, he's got a few really good ones here. Oh, this was a really interesting post. Hasan calling Hila a terrorist could have real-life consequences. I believe Hasan is going to drive one of his fans to violence against the Kleins if he keeps pushing this narrative that Hila's a terrorist. He's doubled down on calling Hila a terrorist on his stream. Didn't have the balls to say that to Ethan's face, though. Yeah, that's true. That's true. He didn't. I asked, do you think Hila's a terrorist? And he said no. Which also doesn't make sense, considering...
Dude, he doesn't have... He doesn't have the balls to say it to Ethan's face. He doesn't have the balls to say, I think your wife is a terrorist. He parades himself as this masculine person, but in the end, he, kowtows to this 50-year-old femboy, okay, named Ethan Klein, this little pudgy Jewish guy, right? Weak. He's not actually masculine. He's a weakling.
He thinks all IDF people are terrorists. It's a terrorist organization.
Like, if you believe that his wife is a terrorist, then just say it. Fuck it. Like, if you say it on your own stream, it just means that you don't want to get his response.
He has been pushing snark propaganda openly since the debate. The snark subreddit is one thing, but Hasan's audience is fucking huge with a lot of bitter young men who have been radicalized by Hasan's rhetoric. Repeatedly calling a woman a terrorist like this will dehumanize and demonize her to the point where her...
I'm a sucker for the Content Cuck intro music. Oh, I actually know about that one. The intro music there is by Otis McDonald. He creates royalty-free, copyright-free music. The moment that I heard it, I knew exactly which music author that it is from.
Fans won't see her as a human being, but a personification of the IDF's cruelty, and they believe violence against her is justified. On this charity stream, you could see just from the donation messages how hateful his community is towards Hila in particular. What Hasan is doing right now will launch a new wave of harassment against Ethan and Hila, and I'm very worried about how it's targeted more towards Hila and Hasan's community. I struggle to believe that Hasan doesn't fully realize what he's doing because he knows how the internet works. He knows the snark pages he's promoting has ruined their lives and how bad the harassment they're already getting from them. What's funny is like I already, even before he started like calling Hila a terrorist, that's kind of already like what he's been leading towards, radicalizing people and dehumanizing.
I mean, if someone who literally supports kidnapping civilians is going to call someone else a terrorist, it's like, how much weight is there behind that punch,
You're talking about his Filipino...
Yeah.
Kidnapping unaffiliated sailors for a year is an act of deterrence.
If someone supports that, they call someone else a terrorist. It's like, okay. The pot and the kettle are kind of like just...
Well, it's more like... Well, it's more like talking about his wife, right? I think there's a difference between calling a random woman a terrorist versus calling his wife a terrorist, right? It's an unhinged attack. Yeah.
Shagging at that point,
Here he's mocking Hila's accent, which...
Okay. The most brazen display of terrorism propaganda is...
Me dehumanizing people as part of his blood? Well, he did it to trans people, right? Didn't he?
Basically every other fucking broadcast where Hila Klein comes on and starts talking about how, Palestinians are there. We want peace, but not really. Okay. Like, that's the real brazen display.
Again, he's doing this thing where he doesn't actually have anything she specifically said, because she hasn't. She's barely talked about it, right? And I mean, Hila's the first to admit the limit of her knowledge. Like, she, that's why she doesn't speak much on it. But for Hasan, he's saying that she's spreading terrorist propaganda because she's always coming on and doing Hespera or something, which, again, the only thing that they have on Hila is that she like made a head gesture once. And there was another one of her saying...
By the way, I'm fine with like copying accents, right? I'm fine with doing that, but the thing is Hasan would never do it with black people. Like, he would never make like a Black American accent or a hood accent, right? Like, he would never.
Or no, I think it's the same one. She made a head gesture and said,
so it's very much like one-sided,
I'm not really, or something, which was separated by several beats.
Food. Do a black accent then? Hey, yo, what's up, man? Okay, sorry. Close enough. Okay.
I mean,
whatever,
this is like, this is unacceptable behavior. I mean, in any world, in any community, in any place,
okay?
this is
Just
unacceptable behavior.
Okay.
Especially towards a, minority group.
Taking the ship to us in the outside world. Okay?
Close.
The most brazen display of terrorism propaganda is...
Yo, what's up, my ninja? There you go.
Basically every other fucking broadcast where Klein comes on and starts talking about how, Palestinians are there. We want peace, but not really. Okay? Like, that's the real brazen display of fucking terrorism propaganda is Klein and Ethan Klein talking about Gaza. Okay?
It's unhinged. It's psychopathic. It's violent. It's hateful. It's a lie. It's vindictive. It's just, he's such a hateful, disgusting human being, and I don't know if you can't see that. Well, his audience can't see it because in their mind, and you can see it from looking at the chat, you can see it from the donations, you can see it from the snark page that he's now aligned himself with, that they don't see us as human. We are just fucking like some violent terrorist entity that deserves by any means necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of wondering recently. I feel like a lot of, if I was going to summarize like the whole argument that happened between you and him, I feel like if you had to put a debate topic down to it, I feel like it would just be a question of, can you support Palestinians without supporting groups that target civilians? I feel like, to me, that based on what you guys say to each other, it seemed like you agreed on everything that was happening in Gaza just like within 2 seconds. And then it was all just about Hezbollah, the Houthis, about Hamas, about Jewish history. To me, like, that's the essence of it. Is like, can you support Palestinians without supporting groups like Hezbollah or the Axis that target civilians? Because the thing I've noticed about a lot of these communities that kind of revolve around Hasan is they keep on doing this, like, the human shield defense, where every time someone criticizes them, they somehow manage to find some dead Arab or some like destroyed Palestinian building, and so they can hold it up like a sandbag and say, why are you criticizing me when why are you attacking pro-Palestinian people in the middle of a genocide, like that kind of thing, right? So the way I see it now, though, is that like you and Hasan didn't really talk that much.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I think I said that Lonerbox looks like a goat. He does kind of look like a goat. Goat boy.
About what's happening in Gaza lately. Like, I'm guessing you've mentioned once or twice the protests in Gaza, right?
Mm-hmm.
The anti-Hamas ones. So there's a reason that I think a lot of people in the other sphere have not really bothered to talk about that. And it's because I think it kills a lot of that narrative, because the way that these people present people like the Houthis or Hezbollah or Hamas is like they are the lines of defense, like they're the resistance against Israel, even though none of them have really done anything to Israel. All of them, Hezbollah and the Houthis, Iran, etc., they pretty much all of them have killed more Arabs than they've killed Israelis, like easily. The Houthis, the only people they're good at fighting are other Yemenis. Hezbollah, the only people they're good at fighting are Syrians, like Syrian Sunnis. Even Hamas, like they did one good pot shot in Israel on October 7th. For the rest of the time, they've been doing a better job at killing their own people who oppose them. They've been doing that now. And I think I don't know if you know much about these anti-Hamas protests in Gaza, but they started with a few hundred people at the end of March. Then it was maybe a couple of thousand, because it started to spread from Beit Lahia, which is northeast of Gaza. So it's been kind of like at the front line between the IDF and Hamas for a long time. Then it moves to like places like Jabalia, very, very famous Hamas stronghold, refugee camp. Then it goes to Khan Yunis, then it goes to Rafah. Like, these protests have not stopped. They've been going on all the way through. Even Associated Press now has estimated that the numbers of protesters might be in the thousands or even tens of thousands. They have not stopped. If you look at their messaging, it's quite hard to get reporting on the ground from them because, one, Israel doesn't let journalists into Gaza, but two, the journalists who are in Gaza are either just flat out pro-Hamas, or like Al Jazeera, which is also pro-Hamas, or they are pressured to not say bad things about Hamas, even if they oppose them quietly. So all it's really been is like people collecting iPhone footage of these protests, and these people who are exercising like unhuman like bravery because they know that Hamas will kill them and has tortured people to death for protesting against them. They've kidnapped people and shot them for protesting. They've brought back like decades old.
So this is another thing that, you know, pro-Pali people never talk about is Palestinian people who are anti-Hamas. All right. These people are they're never talked about, even though support for them has grown in recent times. They're very specifically anti-Hamas.
Security apparatuses to go and clamp down on the protesters. They put
Shit's
curfews
fucked
in.
up.
The protesters are still growing. There's a poll that came out from PSR, very reputable pollster in Israel-Palestine, that asked just yesterday what they thought of the protesters. And almost half of the people in Gaza, 48%, supported them, even though quite a lot of them think that they're like driven by some external influence, like Saudi or something like that, right? That's like almost half of people in Gaza supporting these protesters who are anti-Hamas. And their messaging, you can look at the chants, you can look at the leaders who speak and give little 2-minute speeches. They're all saying like the same kind of lines. Like they're saying, was it Mishan Allah Hamas bara, like for the love of God, Hamas out, or Hiya 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 Hamas or Bahia, which means like Hamas are terrorists, basically. Or they're saying,
Or they're calling Hamas Shiites, which is apparently like one of the worst insults you can ever give to a fundamentalist Sunni Muslim group. Right? They're calling Hamas Shiites. Right? Just so you know how extreme the hatred for Hamas has gotten from Palestinian people who are anti-Hamas, right?
like they accuse Hamas of dealing in their blood or gambling with their lives or selling them out. And they keep saying, we want white flags, not guns. There was a call to release the hostages from these protesters, because I think a lot of people in Gaza are starting to understand that before October 7th, the IDF was not acting like they were prepared to go and launch into Gaza for a full ground invasion. There's been no whistleblowers or anything to suggest that they were prepared for anything more than like a small border penetration of 70 people. That's all the IDF had protocol for before October 7th. People who are there are saying things now like, stop firing rockets from our areas because we know.
Yes, Matthew, that is Lonerbox, okay? Bah! Sorry.
That if you fire a rocket from our town square, the town
Okay, I'm sorry. I also like eating lamb.
square is going to get bombed.
I'm Arab, okay? So I'm allowed to enjoy eating lamb.
Right. So the same poll also showed the number of people in Gaza who still supports armed resistance is down to 30%. The majority of them support negotiation and peaceful protests. They've realized that Hamas's way of doing things, like armed resistance, is not helping them, because It never really has. It's never like trying to target Israeli civilians or launching rockets. It's never helped them. It's never achieved anything for them, and that's becoming a lot more clear. And it's interesting to see that that groundswell is starting to take place in Gaza, and people on the like far left, like self-proclaimed pro-Palestinian people, aren't really talking about it. And I think the problem is that it drives such a massive wedge into everything they've tried to advocate for the last year and a half. Like Hasan tried to say that it was like they're protesting against domestic policy. Like, no, they're not. Listen to their chants. You think they're upset about the fucking tax codes in the middle of a war? No, they're not. They're upset because Hamas is basically treating them like.
Well, don't you know? Okay, Palestinians are they're NIMBYs. Okay, they're just making a pro housing march. Sorry, they're YIMBY. Okay. Well, in a way, I guess it is kind of a NIMBY. I get it. I guess it is like a NIMBY movement because you want Hamas to not be in your backyard. So I guess it is kind of a NIMBY movement in a way. But yeah.
Fodder. They went into Israel. They capped 1,200 people. Then they ran back into Gaza underneath the tunnels with the hostages and said, "Yep, you can fight us if you want, but you're going to have to rip through the entire city to get to us." And they knew Israel would say yes because.
Oh yeah, by the way, another thing is, to keep in mind is that the reason why these Palestinians are protesting against Hamas out in the open so forcefully and saying like the most craziest shit against Hamas is because it is just simply because like they have lost everything, right? Their entire family, or half of their family's dead, right? What do they say? They say Hamas out. Hamas are terrorists. Hamas are Shias. We want to surrender. They don't care about it. Like they say these kinds of things. Basically, is what these anti-Hamas Palestinian protesters say.
Like if you ask Hamas, Israel's the genocidal Zionist entity. Of course they would. So I think things are about to get a lot worse in Gaza right now. Israel's approved a new offensive that is just basically going to mean they are going to permanently.
Are Palestinians Sunni? Yes. So, yeah, they are. I think they're a Sunni terrorist group. Yeah.
Occupy.
Sorry, I mean Hamas is a Sunni terrorist group. Yeah.
By 40% of the Strip. The rest of it, they're going to occupy. They say it's not permanent, but they have no vision for what comes next. So it's basically permanent. And the aid situation, it's been like 65 days since an aid truck has gone into Gaza now. Majority of Israelis, even, I think the last poll showed that 69% of them said that they would support a hostage release, even if it ends the war. There are like growing majorities on both sides now that want this to end. And yeah, I feel like there are things that people can do to support like either side, like to let the people, Gazan protesters, know that people like in the West actually have their back and realize that there can be something different happening there other than like all the dumb shit that Hamas has tried for the last 20 years. And it would behoove actually someone in the West to let Israeli leftists know that actually the ones who are opposing the war and are opposing the future actions of the IDF now, which seems to be most of them, that they do actually have like people outside of the country who like believe in what they're saying, because you can't pressure Trump to do anything. That ship has sailed. But yeah, I think this kind of like, there's a problem with this really like maximalist point of view where people basically think like it's either abolish the Zionist entity, fake country, whatever, or it's Israel is going to genocide and conquer everything, even though there are very large groups on both sides that seem to not really agree with either of this anymore.
Why is Hasan so invested in like discrediting the protesters? I've heard him say that. I've heard him say that they're not. It was taken out of context. They like most of them are there to protest Israel. You know, like why is he so determined on you know
because
Not supporting these people.
Because Hasan and people like him have spent the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, they spent a long time insisting that Israel and Zionism is basically the same as the Nazis. Which is funny because he had to go at you for making a false equivalency between Jews fleeing the Middle East and the Nakba, which is, you could argue it's a false equivalency. Like, they weren't kicked out in the same way. But comparing Nazis to Israel, if you're saying that, it's either, or zone of interest is apparently going on Israel proper. That doesn't make any sense at all. If you're making these comparisons, you either don't know anything about Nazis and Israel, or you're just you're using Nazis as a way to get under the skin of Jews, right? Like, that's what you're doing. Because Israel at least has shown that it is capable of making peace with countries that don't threaten it or don't fight with it, right? Israel and Egypt fought a war in 67, a very bloody one. They fought another bloody war in 73. And then 6 years later, they made peace, right? Israel's made peace with Jordan. Israel, after a long time of fighting with Lebanon, they pulled out. And then after destroying Hezbollah beyond recognition, they pulled basically all the way out of Lebanon as well. Their presence now in Lebanon is like 5 hilltops. They didn't build any settlements there like people said they were going to. The government in Israel is insane. They're very, very right-wing. There are at least 2 or 3 people in there who are just outright like genocidal maniacs. But the country is not like the Nazis. And like people comparing things like the Houthis kidnapping sailors to the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. The difference is like the Warsaw Ghetto had about 400,000 people in it. 2.5 years later, 90% of them were dead. And there was no decision that anyone in that ghetto could have made to survive. It wasn't that they were too much of a threat to German security or German sovereignty and they were trying to destroy Germany, right? That wasn't why. It was on the heads of the Nazis, but it wasn't actually why they were killed. You know, they some of them, none of them had any.
It's kind of insane how much Lonerbox knows. He is the Iron Dome when it comes to IP debate knowledge. Well, that's his job. That's his entire job.
Anything to do with trying to attack Germany. They were disarmed, they were prisoners, and they were killed anyway. A bunch of them died of starvation. The other ones were literally just put in a train and gassed. So. But the difference is that with Nazis, their victims, there was nothing they could do to escape their fate. There was no amount of politicking or anything that the Jews could do to survive other than run away, or if they wanted to just fight and die to the end. With Gaza, the protesters...
His job for the region? Yeah, it's kind of funny how he was just a general breadtuber until this entire conflict dropped. And then because he has looked into this issue so autistically to the point where, you know, it's like an autistic fixation for him. And then now when the conflict dropped, he's like, my time has come. I'm going to make my entire career based off of this issue now. So it is pretty funny.
They drive a wedge into what people like Hasan are saying is because when they say we want white flag.
And by the way, he's not some kind of scholar either. I like the last thing I want people to think is that he is that Lonerbox is some kind of unapproachable god when it comes to information like this. When contrary, this is far from the truth. I think that Lonerbox is once again a regular person who did enough research to be able to turn this into a career. And I believe that lots of other people can do this. And I think that if you really do want to make a positive impact on the world and you think there's too much misinformation going around, yeah, it's not a bad thing to do, I guess.
Not arms. It's because they know that Israel didn't have any plans to go and occupy Gaza before October 7th. That they thought Hamas were being pragmatic, that they just wanted to focus on domestic rule, right? They thought Hamas were...
Loner had an autistic fixation on Palestine prior to October 7th? Yeah. Well, yes, but only because all leftists are.
Trying to be, like, restrained in exchange for Qatari aid money and domestic, like improving the humanitarian situation at home. and then Hamas went and attacked, right? So I think the difference is that if you think Israel is like the Nazis, then you would
He is Lebanese too. Yes, he is.
think, well, you might as well just fight because they're going to do this to you anyway. Even though the protesters seem to understand that if Hamas is gone, then you're not going to see the same, you're not going to see airstrikes all over Gaza if Hamas gives up their arms and says that they'd like someone else to go in. Now, there's still problems with the Israeli government of like letting that happen, but I think that's probably why they don't like what the protesters are saying and why they're ignoring it. It's because if you acknowledge them, then you have to change everything about what you think about Israel.
Right.
Yeah, this comparison to Nazism is like, it's so hurtful to as a Jewish person, and people throw that around like it's not a direct assault on like Jewish identity. And I mean, Hasan is chief among them, and it's just crazy how it's just completely normalized, you know. Yeah, it's a shame. He's such a piece of shit. The way I see it is Hasan is like, there's protesters, and Hasan is like, no, you guys need to fight till you're all dead. Like over from Los Angeles in his cozy West Hollywood house, you know. Fight till the end, you guys. They're like, we don't want war. We actually want to live in peace. We want this over. He's like, no, you need to fight. It's like, okay.
Well, that's what I mean by the Orientalism, right? Because it's so funny what he said about the Houthis, because I think, you know, when he was saying like, what would you do to stop the genocide from Yemen, right?
Yeah.
If you're the poorest country, so that's an admission. Saying that is an admission that they're not really doing anything to help, right? Bankrupting the port of Eilat is not going to stop Israel trying to bomb the organization that tried to destroy their country, right? That's not how that works. All the Houthis can do is make a dent in Israel, right? One of those missiles might actually kill 2 Jews, okay? And they'd probably be civilians. But it's interesting that you would say that, because when he spoke about what should the Houthis do when there's a genocide in their backyard, Israel and Gaza is not in the Houthis' backyard. It's 1,000 miles away. The Houthis' backyard is Yemen. And right now, there are still people who are hungry in Yemen. There's still malnutrition in Yemen. There's still like severe malnutrition in Yemen. There's like really serious hunger issues there. And the Houthis are, so to say that as if like they don't matter, and the Houthis should just instead focus on diverting their resources into their little helicopters and their shitty rockets and going into the sea to kidnap sailors, because inshallah, maybe one of these like missiles will land in a field outside an airport, or maybe like if we kidnap enough people, then another port in Israel will go bankrupt. It's like, so really you're just going to like see the rest of the Arab world as like fodder. Then they don't matter. Right. What the Houthis can do, the answer to that question, what should the Houthis do? The Houthis have the power to take care of their own people. They are in charge of 2/3 of the population in Yemen. They have the ability to stop kidnapping aid workers. The UN literally asked them to do this year. They have the ability to stop stealing aid and divert it equally amongst their population. They have the ability to seek diplomatic relations and normalization. Biden took them off the terror list specifically because that would help distributing aid across Yemen. And then they went and attacked a bunch of ships. The Houthis have the ability to they have the ability to try and use the resources that they have access to alleviate the suffering of their own people. And they would do a much better job of that than they ever will at destroying Israel or like kidnapping sailors and bankrupting ports. Like, it's just LARP. It's just entertainment for Westerners. Like, it's not achieving anything. And I just find that really interesting that it's like the Arabs are only ever viewed through the lens of how do we fuck with Israel, even though all these groups, in order to do that, there's like this correlation.
Right. By the way, this is what I mean as Hasan and his crowd dehumanizes people. Like, they're not actually, and I want to be very clear on this, they don't actually care about Arabs. They are Islamophobic, anti-Semitic propagandists. It benefits them for both sides to die. The more people die, the more content they get to cover, and the higher their viewership will go, which is extremely important for Hasan. And Yeah.
Almost between fucking your own society and trying to destroy Israel. Because the Yemens, the Houthi-controlled Yemen,
Sexuality,
like the
of
Houthis
course
fuck their own society. By the way, they do actually engage in
they look at
practices
Houthis
that
like
would easily be
football.
called slavery, right?
Yeah.
They kidnap
Yeah.
Ethiopian migrants and force them to the front lines, promising them money, and they never give it to them. That's kind of like slavery. They have child soldiers. That's kind of like slavery. Children can't choose, especially if they're under like 14, 15. They arrest Yemeni women on trumped up charges of immodesty or like drug taking or prostitution or whatever, and then take those women and pass them around the security officials and force them to commit sexual acts on them, which is a form of slavery, like sexual slavery. They do all these things, and that's not from the Saudi press, by the way. This is from Yemeni lawyers and human rights organizations and from victims themselves. This is all attested to. Like, I'm sorry, if you think Ethiopian migrants are Saudi plants, well, go ahead, but and this is true with every organization that people support. Hezbollah have done fuck all to damage Israel. They've done a lot to damage Lebanon. They've done a lot to damage Syria. Iran, same thing with their own country. And I think that, I don't know, the sooner this kind of like worldview just dies, the better, because I think it's kind of clear now that they have failed. Hezbollah are not what they used to be. Assad is gone. The Iranians ran away from Yemen because they want to focus on, they're worried about Trump and the threats to their nuclear facilities and everything else. The Houthis have stood down from Trump. So I can't remember what the question was. I'm just saying, like, this whole idea of like trying to destroy Israel through force or even
So I guess what he's saying is Trump is actually the good guy. I'm kidding. He's
not.
not.
Through like BDS and everything, it's always been a lost cause, and that's because people don't understand why Jews arrived there. They didn't arrive there for the same reason that the French went to Algeria or the Dutch and the British went to South Africa. Most Israelis are there because their grandparents are refugees, like because they were fleeing. They were either running away from pogroms or from the Nazis and from the Middle East and North Africa. That's why they're there. And the problem is that you're never going to make them leave. You can get the French to leave Algeria. You're not going to get the Israelis to leave.
There's nowhere for them to go. I don't even understand the argument. Go where?
And you're also, and this is maybe the thing that I think Westerners have a bit of a harder time digesting because they're not used to it, but they're also not going to accept living as a minority. It's not because they're racist. I'm sure a lot of them are, but it's because everyone knows what happened to Jews who lived in Muslim majority countries.
So that was a big point.
They were not safe.
Hasan was calling me a racist piece of shit. Actually, he was calling me a racist piece of shit for just literally reciting the history of Jews fleeing persecution in Arab countries. He thought that was Zionist talking points.
Really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there was a time when the Ottoman Empire had a golden age for Jews and Jewish safety. That's like 1,000 years ago. Dhimitude was a thing. Like Jews were second-class citizens. They were accepted as a sparse, powerless, useless minority. In Fez in Morocco, if they walked past the mosque, they weren't allowed to wear shoes. When one sultan allowed them to wear shoes, people got angry and beat them up for it. So they weren't allowed.
I remember that, Ethan. Hasan quoted the scholar, and then Ethan quoted the same guy. Then Hasan called him racist. Oh, you're talking about the person where it's like, oh, was that the person where it was fuck, what was it? Oh, it's like Hasan tried to get a quote, right? And then Ethan called him out on his bullshit, right?
It was very difficult for them to press charges if a Muslim ever committed crimes against them. In Algeria, before the French arrived, there were like 3 massacres of Jews in less than 30 years. So protection wasn't always offered
I can give you the Papa Gut clip. Yeah, sure.
there either. So it's like, that's the thing that I think people struggle with, is that in the last, sorry, the Golden Age wasn't Ottomans. It was, that wasn't Ottoman rule. Sorry. In the last 100 years, like Jewish people have not been able to be a minority in any Middle Eastern country. Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Morocco, Algeria, none of these countries were able to hold on to their Jewish populations. Even Iran, which somehow holds on to some of them, even their Jewish population is dropping. So if they can't do that, then I just think it's very weird for people to say when they talk about Israeli Jews being a minority in a one state of Palestine, then it's like, well, are you really suggesting that out of all the countries in the last 100 years, that Palestine will be the first one that takes care
The scholar's called Avi Shleim. Okay.
of their Jewish minority and respects them and gives them equal rights? Like
Especially
Palestine,
after
the one
like,
group of people that has the most of an excuse to be anti-Semitic,
yeah, exactly.
right? Like Palestine, number one.
There's an insane conflict.
It's 2 minutes long.
Dan, I sent you a clip.
No.
One of the most important scholars on this issue
my God,
is an Iraqi Jew by the name of Avi Shleim.
Yeah, I love this. Let's listen to him. Yeah.
Jews were convinced that Israel had a hand in uprooting them. After the 1948 war, there was mounting popular hostility towards the Jews in Iraq.
Yeah, so this was what I was talking about. Yes.
5 bombs exploded in Jewish sites. The series of bombs created a panic which led more and more Jews to register to leave the country. I met an elderly friend of my mother's, an Iraqi Jew called Yaakov Kalkukli, who had been in the Zionist underground. One member of his group, Yosef Basri, a very, very intelligent Jewish lawyer, and his assistant, Shalom Saleh Shalom, were responsible for 3 out of the 5 bombs.
Let's grant that what he's saying is true and that 3 of the 5 bombs were done by Zionists, right? How does that explain 150,000 people leaving the fucking country? Thousands of years of civilization that have been there, 2,000 years, just picking up and leaving, almost virtually gone.
Why is it that the Israeli government benefited from creating instability and making it seem as though these countries were uninhabitable?
Before the bombs went off, 100,000 of the 125 Jews were already registered to leave. You said they left by choice. They left because of Zionism. They left because they were being threatened. Let's hear what your respected historian has to say, you liar.
That's right.
Wait,
listen.
This was such a good moment. Holy.
This is true. The main reason for the exodus was not the bombs. It was persecution by the government. And I concede that.
No. Contend with what I'm saying. He said we did not leave Iraq because we were Zionists. We left because we were no longer safe. Do you want to explain what he meant by that? Explain what he meant by saying we didn't leave because we were Zionists. We left because we were no longer safe.
Okay.
Explain to me.
I can't wait to bring up Avi Shleim on the broadcast to make you look like a...
I can't wait to. And now explain what he means by that. We did not leave Iraq because we were Zionists. We left because we were no longer safe.
Iraqis are not Palestinian, you moron! You racist piece of...
What?
Because Iraq and the pan-Arabic nationalist movements that arise out of...
You are out of your mind.
It's not about Palestinians.
Okay, so what did the Jews in Iraq have to do with Israel, you bigot? You are so out of your mind.
I just want to be absolutely clear what I'm watching here. Ethan presses Hasan on the mass migration of Jews to Israel back in the day because they were effectively threatened and made to feel unsafe in their own home country. Hasan talks about some scholar, references him as saying, see, he agrees with me. Ethan plays a different clip of the scholar very clearly disagreeing with him. And then Hasan has a meltdown about how racist Ethan is. I mean, that just sounds just like our Hasan Parker. Go right to racism when you get absolutely fucking...
Wait, did he say Hasan Parker? Wait, what's the joke here? What's the joke behind Hasan Parker? Whatever.
They've been on the receiving end of horrific violence for a long time. Yeah, that's kind of my point. Oh, well, that is my point, which is that it's not... In the video, I ask, is it really that crazy to not even be a little bit worried about your safety? And it's not reasonable to look at people and be like, actually, yes, there is a risk that there'll be a lot of violence against you, or maybe you'll be ousted, or maybe you'll become second-class citizens. There's a small chance of that happening. But I think you'll probably be okay. So you should take down your borders and dissolve your government. It's like no nation on Earth in the whole history of Earth would ever do that. It's just illogical.
I mean, like South Africa did it, but then that's because anti-white racism has just never been as much of an issue as anti-Semitism. You'd think a left-winger would know that, right? Like, go figure. Yeah, anti-Semitism is a more valid concern than like the anti-white racism in South Africa. So, yeah, you're not going to convince people that Palestine will be the first Arab or Muslim majority country that treats its Jewish minority well. It's a stretch. The sooner people recognize that these are 2 national groups, both of them have a right to be there, both of them have very legitimate reasons for why they're there, and neither of them are going away. And which is why I just think it makes much more sense to learn that that what needs to be done is to find ways that can push these 2 groups, or like can make sure these 2 groups can actually live, Israelis in their place and Palestinians in theirs, and they can have like Maybe one day there'll be softer borders or immigration and things like that, but they kind of need their states first, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately that was my driving point was like, you need Palestinian self-determination and Israel has a right to secure its borders. And without both of those things, like whatever solution there is needs to take both those things into account. Otherwise, there's always...
Who else thinks the new Kanye song is a bang? Are you talking about the one that is the one about Hitler?
going to be a conflict.
Is that what you're talking about?
The biggest thing for me that I want people to understand is like basically the flight, the exodus of Jews out of Arab countries after 1948, which Hasan just, he says that entire notion is just propaganda, it's racism, it's lies. And I really don't even know what to say about that. It's just erasing their entire history. You know, these idiots on the Arab podcast saying that Jews cooking hummus in Israel is cultural genocide. I mean, what kind of psychotic shit is that? But anyway, I think we've explored this quite well, and I appreciate your input on this. I thought it was a very interesting conversation. So
this was depressing.
I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks for letting me yap. I love it.
And that's Lonerbox. If you guys want to watch him on, you stream on YouTube, right? Primarily.
Yeah, Lonerbox live on YouTube.
There it is, guys. Thank you, man. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Lonerbox is so dumb that he would get dog walked by Hasan and Present Sunday. What? Did that ever happen?